Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you haven't heard yet, my newest book has just released. You can grab Bankai, Baffling Japanese Internet Mysteries Volume 2 on Amazon right now. If you enjoyed the first volume, or strange internet mysteries in general, you don't want to miss this one. You can find the link on kowabana.net, or just search for Bankai Volume 2 on Amazon. Don't miss out. You may have noticed that we're rapidly approaching our 100th episode. In fact, it's the very next one. But before then, I have two more brilliant stories to share with you this week. This first one instantly became one of my favorites upon reading it, and although I am not easily spooked by stories, this one certainly has enough creepy imagery that it even gave me the chills. But enough from me. Let's head right on in. This one's called Song of Return. This happened towards the end of the year one year. I received an invitation from one of my work colleagues. I'm heading back home for the New Year's holidays, so why don't you join me? We have an interesting event that takes place every year, so I was thinking you might want to see it. This colleague was older than me, but she was friendly and had always treated me kindly since I joined the company. We got along well both inside and outside of work, and she took me to various places around town, but this was the first time she'd asked me to go with her on a trip so far away. I felt bad about bothering her during the year-end and New Year's holidays, but she told me not to worry about it, and since I had no plans to go back to my parents' house, I decided to accept her invitation. When I asked her about the details, she said the event took place in town from December 29th to December 31st, and so we should go and see it alongside seeing the New Year in. Then I asked her about the event itself. It takes place in my town every year, she said. One person is chosen from town and the event is held for them. It starts at midnight, so technically it runs for 3 days from the 30th to New Year's Day. Late at night? What do you do at that time? That's for you to look forward to. My mother was chosen this year, so both my father and I are over the moon. Oh, is that so? I don't really understand what's going on, but don't you think I'll just be in the way then? It's fine. Don't worry about my family. Just come and enjoy yourself. Well, our holidays don't start until the 30th, so we won't see the first day though. I didn't know the specifics, but I was intrigued nevertheless. If you want to see it from the start, then we could head straight there after work on the 29th, she said, guessing that I was intrigued. I'd like for you to see it right from the start as well. It only happens once a year, and this year my mother was chosen, so, you know. I wanted to do that, but I felt like it would be asking her a bit too much, so we decided to go on the 30th. She seemed a little disappointed, but she agreed, and so I was going to spend from the 30th to the 1st at her family home. We set out in my colleague's car around 9 a.m. that morning. Her family home was about a 3-hour drive from where we lived. We chatted as she drove, and I was excited to see just what this event was. Before long, the scenery started to change, and then my colleague spoke up. It rained yesterday, huh? Just as she said, it had rained until late the previous night. It wasn't like that statement broke the flow of conversation or anything, and it was a harmless topic. But something about it felt off. It did. I'm glad it stopped today. Does the event still go ahead even if it's raining? It should be fine. It went ahead last night as planned. To tell you the truth, I went home yesterday, so I'm pretty wiped. I went straight home after work, participated in the event, and then once it was done, came back to get you. I'm exhausted. She yawned, but the strange feeling I'd had when she spoke before was gone. We continued on our way, chatting about this and that, and then finally, we arrived. It was right on midday. We got out of the car, and as I turned to look at my colleague's parents' house, I was shocked. It was a large house, like an old mansion, but there was a pool of water in the garden. It was about the same size as a koi pond. A pool of water that large wouldn't be strange if it were natural, perhaps, but it looked anything but to me. It was kinda like a bathtub full of dirty water. What on earth was it? This is related to the event. Just don't fall over it, okay? It's pretty deep, my colleague said. I found the situation strange, but at any rate, I followed her as she led me into the house. Once we were inside, a woman rushed over to us. "You're late." "Ah, is this the guest you spoke of?" "She is," my colleague said. She then turned to me and told me that this woman was her mother's older sister. When we were done exchanging pleasantries, she led us further inside for the lunch she had already prepared. After lunch, I said hello to my colleague's father, who was in the living room, and then she guided me to her old room on the second floor. I went inside and had a brief rest, and then I noticed something as I looked out the window. I could see several of the neighbours' houses, and they all had large holes in their yards as well. These ones weren't full of water though. They were just empty. Intrigued, I asked my colleague about it. "Ah, they're all the houses waiting to be chosen. Houses without holes mean that someone has already been chosen, so they don't need one. And if you've been chosen, well, it's just like what you saw outside. They fill the hole in with water. Being chosen sure is tough. That's why my mum isn't here right now. She's getting ready," she said. Looking back on it now, there was a strange atmosphere hanging over the room at that moment. Even after listening to her explanation, I still had no idea what was going on. Initially, I thought it was nothing more than a festive event I could enjoy, but now things were starting to feel strange. But still, I couldn't say anything rude like that to her, so I prayed that I was just overthinking matters. We decided to kick back until the event started that day. Because she hadn't slept much, my colleague fell asleep, and I spent the rest of my time talking to her aunt. That night we ate dinner, took a bath, and then waited for the event to start. I didn't see her mother once during all that time. Things started moving after 11 p.m. The four of us were chatting when the phone rang, and my colleague's aunt answered. After talking for about 10 minutes, she hung up and told my colleague and her dad, "It's about time to go and get ready." "Why don't you stay here?" she said to me. "I'll stay with you, don't worry." "Sure," I said, no idea what was going on. Then my colleague approached her aunt, a sullen look on her face. The mood turned sour for some reason, and then the two of them suddenly started arguing. "Auntie, you stayed behind yesterday as well, didn't you? Why?" "I've been telling you this for years, haven't I? I don't agree with it. If you're gonna do it, then you can go and do it yourselves." "Mum was finally chosen, and you're still going on about that? Even though you already had it done yourself? Mum has been preparing for this day for so long. I'm different to you. That's enough. Just go already." I was confused, unable to comprehend what was going on, and my anxiety from earlier was getting worse. The two continued to argue for a while, but then my colleague looked at her watch, closed her mouth, and the fight was over. Her father had already left the house while they were arguing, and, annoyed, my colleague got ready and then made her way to the front door as well. "I'm more fired up than I was yesterday. Just you watch what's about to happen. You got it?" she said to me before leaving. Once I lost sight of her, her aunt suddenly slammed the door, locked it, and then dragged me back to the living room. Then she looked into my face and started speaking with a mysterious look on hers. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you," she said. "It's already after midnight. Once the clock strikes 1, it will start. If we don't do anything, then you're going to end up a sacrifice." I hadn't expected her to say that. "Eh? I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean?" "I'll tell you the details later. For now, we need to discuss how to get out of this. Now that things have gone this far, you'll have to watch the event. At 1 a.m, go up to the 2nd floor and look out the window. No matter what happens, you must watch until the end. However, you mustn't say a word. Just watch and listen." "Listen? Listen to what? What on earth is going on?" "To the song. Listen to the song the children sing. You must listen to it until the very end. You mustn't cover your ears until it's over, okay?" I had no idea what she was going on about, and all I wanted to do was cry. My head was spinning, wondering if I'd gotten wrapped up in something terrible and what I should do. My colleague's aunt gently stroked my hair and told me everything would be okay, but I didn't know what to believe. But either way, the time was fast approaching. In the end, I had no choice but to do as she told me. As time passed, my heart raced so fast that I thought it might burst. What should I do? What should I do? 1 a.m. approached, and her aunt asked me to go upstairs. I asked her to come with me. "I'll stay here, so please come back down once the song has finished. Make sure you do exactly as I just told you, okay?" she said. She pushed me upstairs, and although I wanted to run, I entered my colleague's old bedroom. I didn't look outside, however. I sat on the ground beneath the window and trembled. I hate this. I'm scared. That was all I could think. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. I don't remember how long I sat there. I think it was a long, long time. Suddenly, I realized I could hear something. People talking? People screaming? I could hear something out there. I approached the window before I could stop myself and looked outside. There were swarms of people standing around that pool of water. Children, adults, men and women. There were teenagers, kids around 5 or 6 years old, and some middle-aged folk, and even some elderly people. There must have been 20 or more people out there, and they were all drenched, like they had been standing out in the rain or something. They didn't budge, just looked into the water. Then they started saying something. I watched the scene frozen in fear, and slowly I came to hear what they were saying. I wanted to cover my ears right away at the strange sound, but I remembered what the aunt said and did my best to bear it. Finally, I understood what the sound was. It was a song. Just like she said, it sounded like they were singing. It was a mixture of several voices and a creepy melody that sounded like white noise in my head. The lyrics sounded something like this. "Where is the child who cannot return? The child who cannot return is in the pond. Who is the child who cannot return? The child who cannot return is Maru Maru. Somebody's name? Where is the returning child? The returning child is outside the pond. Who is the returning child? The returning child is Maru Maru. This one sounded like my name. What is the child who cannot return doing? The child who cannot return is crying. What is the returning child doing? The returning child is crying." The lyrics repeated twice. They sang as they stood looking into the water, dripping wet. Nobody seemed to be screaming, yet I could clearly hear the song all the way from the room I was in. I had honestly never felt fear like that before. As they repeated the song, I just trembled, watching them and listening. As soon as the song was over, a hush fell over the room, and then one of the people looked up and over at me. It was my colleague, and she had a big smile plastered on her face. I was too scared to notice him earlier, but looking closer, her father was there as well. My colleague was the only one looking up at me and smiling, and I didn't know how to react. After standing there for a while, she suddenly turned and walked away. Then everyone else started moving and followed her. It was over. I gulped and sat on the spot, dumbfounded at what had just happened. I wanted to return to her aunt as soon as possible, but I couldn't move. My head felt foggy and I was so dizzy that I felt like I was about to pass out, so she came upstairs instead. "It's over. You must have been so frightened. You did well. It's okay now. It's okay," she said and held me close. The tears burst forth like a dam breaking and I cried my eyes out. I honestly didn't know what to think. After I calmed down, her aunt helped me back to the living room. It was already past 2 a.m. "There's no time to relax," her aunt said after checking the time. "That girl and her father won't return tonight, but they will be back again to carry out that same ritual." "Eh?" "The next one will be at 3. The song will be slightly different to the one you just heard. If we hang around here, then they'll be back around that water before you know it. Then there will be no going back." "So, what should we do? What should we do?" "Calm down. We're going to go back to my place. It's a short distance outside town, but you must leave everything you brought with you here. It will be too dangerous if you bring it with you. I'll explain more later. Come, let's go." I did as she said and we ran out of the house to her car parked in a vacant lot a short distance away. Then we left town. Everywhere I looked, it all looked the same and it felt like we were trying to escape from a maze. About an hour later, we finally arrived at her house. We went inside and she showed me to a particular room, but once I saw it, I was overcome with fear again. The only thing inside was a small table, and the walls and roof were covered in charms. No matter how you looked at it, it was strange. Had I been fooled? Was my colleague's aunt also complicit in something awful? I couldn't get the thought out of my head. It was one thing after another, and none of it made any sense to me. It was becoming harder and harder to trust anyone other than myself. "You probably have a lot of things on your mind, and you must be scared, but we can only talk inside this room," she said, as though reading my mind. "I'm sorry. Please endure it a little longer." She guided me over to the table where I slowly sat down, and then she sat opposite me. Then she started to talk. I'll write down most of what she said. This is pretty much how it went down. Where should I begin? Well, what did you hear from my niece and why did you come here? She said there was an interesting event that takes place over New Year's, so she asked me to come and see it. She said that someone from town was chosen and the event was held for them and that this year it was her mother. Did you hear that it lasts for 3 days and that today is the second day? Did she ask you to come from the very first day? She did. She said she wanted me to see it from the start, but in the end, I refused. I didn't want to bother her too much, so... I see. Everything she told you is true. It's held every year for the person who is selected, and this year, that person was her mother. She wanted to show it to you from day one because it has a special meaning. What do you mean? Did you see her mother even once today? You didn't, did you? On the contrary, nobody even told you where she was or what she was doing today, right? Of course not. Because that girl's mother, my sister, is dead. She died several years ago. Eh? It was when she was in school, so a long time ago now. Meaning she wasn't around when you first heard about the event as well. How? But... So then, what does her being chosen mean? What happened just before? It was designed to bring the dead back to life. Being chosen means that you have a chance at coming back. Each year, one dead person gets the chance to come back. However, it's no good unless the family also wants it to happen. If you do, then you dig a large hole in your yard, and that is the sign that you wish to participate. If you are chosen, the hole will at some point fill with water, and a large pool will be created. This happens between January 2nd and December 1st, so it takes a bit of time. Then, the family who are chosen will carry out the event you saw from the 29th to the 31st. Then, the water disappears on January 2nd, and over time, another person will be chosen. You heard a song before, yes? Did you listen all the way to the end? Can you tell me what you heard? I told her what I heard, and she clarified a few things. The first name I heard was that of the chosen dead person. The second name was that of the person to be sacrificed. In order to bring the chosen dead back to life, the sacrifice must hear the song for 3 days straight. That was why my niece said that she wanted you to see it from the start. The content of the song changes between 1 and 2 a.m. and 3 and 4 a.m, and they sing it twice. That's a total of 12 times over 3 days, and with the content changing 6 times. What you heard just before was the third song. After hearing the 12th and final song, the sacrifice is pushed into the water. What climbs out of the water isn't that person, however, but the chosen dead. The sacrifice is never seen again, and so the dead is able to return and take their place amongst the living. But even so, most people only take part in the event as a form of condolence. This time is the only time in the last few years that someone has really tried to resurrect the dead. Or maybe it would be better to say my niece is the only one. She's still stuck on her mother, even all these years later. From the moment she found out her mother was chosen, she started talking about you. I don't know why she chose you, but she intends to sacrifice you to bring her mother back. By all rights, this shouldn't be possible with you arriving on the second day. The sacrifice must be there for all 3 days. But the rain messed things up. All of these events, including the song, are called the Song of Return. Originally, it was related to the worship of something in old times. It brings back the dead, so maybe it was a spirit or something from another world. And it's said that thing likes the rain. If it rains even just 1 day during those 3 days and you sing the song, well... At any rate, it rained yesterday, so now it doesn't matter that you weren't here for the first day. Normally, once the event is finished on the 3rd day, then her mother would appear, but she was already in that water yesterday. She was watching you when you first arrived, and when you listened to the song just before. That was what my niece said when she talked about her mother getting ready. I don't think she'll give up so easily. She'll wait until she's chosen again, so that hole in their yard will likely never disappear. And that marks the end of the Song of Return. I had numerous questions about it, but I was unable to ask them. I thought that if I did, I might lose my mind. I stayed at my colleague's aunt's house that night, and in the morning she drove me home. Starting tomorrow until next year, you must stay out of the rain for the entire year, she said as we parted. You should avoid going outside when it rains. It might make things difficult, but you must do it. Everything will be fine once the year has passed. If something does happen and you're worried, come and see me. I really am sorry for frightening you. Take care. After the New Year's holidays, my colleague didn't come into work for a while. Apparently the bosses got a message that her mother had passed away. I quit the company that year. As her aunt warned me, I didn't go out at all on rainy days, so I was unable to continue working. I didn't know when it might suddenly start raining, so I shut myself in my room at my parents' house for the entire year. My colleague returned to work around the same time I quit, and is still working there. I really don't want to see her ever again. But now, I'm living a perfectly normal life again. This next story features a story within a story, a terrifying tale the narrator hears at a gathering one night, before realizing that the story perhaps isn't quite over yet. Find out why in The Story Only I Heard. I love scary stories, and I enjoy hearing them, reading about them, and watching them. At the time, I was really into offline meetings as well, where we all met to eat and tell each other scary tales. There's nothing better than eating a meal with friends who have the same interests as you. But there's a good reason why I stopped going to these meetings. My group of friends met irregularly, whenever our schedules all happened to match. There were 20 to 30 of us each time, and while I knew most of them well, on occasion, there were new people I'd never seen before. And on this particular day, there was one newcomer in particular who really stood out. It was a guy in a business suit, despite the fact it was a casual dinner amongst friends. Well, there are some people who wear suits for their everyday wear, so I didn't pay too much attention to that. What bothered me most was that he seemed to be terribly unwell. I was worried that he might work for one of those black companies, the ones that work their employees to death with no overtime pay, and he had no time to get changed, which was why he showed up in his suit. At any rate, he had caught my attention, and I waited for my chance to corner him so we could talk. I didn't have to wait long. The man came over and sat next to me as dinner started. I started a conversation with him right away. "Nice to meet you. My name is Maru Maru." I gave him my online nickname. "Maru Maru? That's a strange name." "Oh, it's not my real name. It's the name I use online." "What's your online handle?" "My online handle? I don't have one, so you can call me by my real name, Kay." I wondered why he was there if he wasn't a member of our online group, but I was enjoying myself, so I didn't worry too much about it. "By the way, why are you wearing a suit tonight?" That's a long story. Do you want to hear it?" And with that, the man started his story. There was this girl that I dated ever since our school days. It's a little embarrassing to speak of out loud, but she really was a wonderful woman. Her name was M. She was kind to everyone and beautiful as well. Her smile was so cute. Just seeing a woman's smile can give you energy, but she was something special. All of the boys adored her, so I doubt I was the only one who thought that way. We continued dating even after we graduated, and we even started thinking about marriage. We both enjoyed watching movies, and on this particular day, we went out to see one. It was a large 3-story building, so we got in the elevator. Well, we were young, so we could have easily taken the stairs, and in reality, we really should have. The two of us were in the elevator alongside another man. Then something strange happened. That man squeezed in between us and pushed me into the side of the elevator. "Huh?" I thought, and then he started talking to M. "M, long time no see. Do you remember me?" I was confused at this sudden turn of events, but M seemed even more confused. Her reaction wasn't unreasonable considering the situation. Things weren't right. The man continued talking, It doesn't matter if you don't remember me. Yeah, the fact that I'm the only one who remembers means my feelings were true. I'm S. We went to school together, from kindergarten to junior high. After a pause, M seemed to remember him, but that still didn't explain the situation. S-kun. Yeah, I remember now. But what do you want? His answer was unbelievable. M, I came to get you. Marry me. I flipped out and grabbed his collar. Who the hell do you think you are? And who the hell are you? He retorted. I liked M first. You came later. Therefore, I win. He wasn't making any sense, and I figured there was no point talking to him any longer. I grabbed M and we got off the elevator. I'll come and get you. Don't worry, he yelled at us as we departed. We were no longer in the mood to watch a movie, so we chatted as we returned to the car. Who on earth was that guy? I asked. S-kun. We always used to hang out together, but it was just by coincidence. He was like a quiet shadow who never involved himself with me. I could see she was shaking. Of course she was. At any rate, I figured I'd have to be especially careful of this S-man as well. The next morning, we woke up as usual and set off for work. Right as I was about to arrive, I got a call from M. Kay, help me. S is at my office. A bad feeling washed over me, but I never once thought things would change so suddenly. We only just ran into him the night before. Right as I was about to enter work, I turned to make my way towards M. She waited for me at a nearby convenience store. Her face was white and she looked terrified. Where is he? I asked. He was apparently waiting at the front of her office. I rushed over and he was still there. The moment I saw him, all of the anger inside me welled up and I rushed over to him. Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing, asshole? You back the hell up, you hear me? People on their way to work stopped to look at us, but I didn't care. I told you I would come and pick Em up, S said. I love her, and I have since long before you. I've been watching her all this time. She's mine. The next moment, S went flying into the ground. My punch put him there. I was so full of rage I didn't even realize I'd hit him. A crowd gathered around us and somebody called the police. Somehow, I was able to get away with just a stern warning. Em and I both took the day off work. I'll come and get you, S said again as he left. He wasn't right in the head, and we both trembled, realizing we'd gotten mixed up with someone terrifying. After that, S continued to follow Em around. Our peaceful lives were over in an instant. S would show himself to Em, but he never once tried to speak to her. He just let her know that he was there. I hated it. If he actually hurt her, as awful as that would be, then at least the police would be able to move. But like this, just standing around, there was not a single thing we could do about it. But he always made sure Em knew he was there. He was always there, no matter where she went. So, Em withdrew and never left the house. She started to lose her mind and her smile disappeared as well. Even after Em stopped leaving the house, S's attacks didn't abate. I don't know where he got her number from, but if he was free, he would call her. Naturally, we blocked him, but he had seemingly endless numbers that he called from. Even if we blocked it, he would call again from another number. There was no end to them. In the end, Em cancelled her phone contract. We thought things would calm down after that, but Em started receiving letters instead. Every day she got passionate love letters from S, alongside 11 photos from her childhood. There were pictures of her as a toddler that only her family should have access to, as well as several photos taken without her knowledge across varying years. Every single photo was taken during her birthday month. M's condition visibly declined. She couldn't leave the house, so she quit her job, and she both clung to me and blamed me for everything. So even though I loved her, our relationship soured as well. On a side note, due to various unfortunate circumstances, she didn't have a single relative left alive either. As for me, I was already appalled at how persistent S was. Those photos wouldn't be something he had unless he really did like her from all that time ago. I started to think that maybe my feelings towards her were nothing compared to his. Sometimes I even thought it was her fault for being so popular. I'm an asshole, right? Driven into a wall, I decided to investigate S myself. But no matter where I looked, I couldn't find anything about him. He didn't appear to have a single person you could call his friend, nor was there any evidence of a work history. He never stood out as particularly skilled in sports or study, and even when I asked M's classmates about him, they said that they barely even remembered him. His parents were wealthy and lived in a large house. He was apparently the middle of 3 children, but when I visited his parents' house, they insisted that no such person existed. Unlike M, he still had a family, but I had never seen someone like that so isolated before, and I felt a little bad for him. Then, later that night, I decided to take M for a walk to get our mind off things. S suddenly appeared in front of us. M screamed and I approached him. "Let's end this," I said. "End this?" "I'll step back," I said. That was the only thing I could do. "No way! You're kidding, right? You're just going to abandon me like that?" M started hitting me, but I had no idea what to do. Then S spoke. "Then you should use this." I looked down and he was holding a knife. "You just have to kill me with this. Come on." Then he handed the knife to me. I must have been driven into a corner as well. Ah, so that's all I have to do, I thought. And then I rushed him. My hands felt warm, and the moment they did, S collapsed to the ground. An ambulance took him away, but he soon passed away. I was arrested on suspicion of murder, and I spent some time in prison. Numerous people came to see me while I was there, including M, of course. During one meeting, she suddenly said something without warning. S-kun is still coming to see me. But S was already dead. At that moment, I understood what she was saying. Once my sentence was over, and I was finally freed, the first thing I did was visit M's house. "I'll be waiting with your favourite fried pork and ginger," she said the day before, and with that in mind, I hurried over. But when I opened the door, the first thing I saw was M, hanging by the neck. The cold pork sat on the table with a letter from M. She apologized and told me she still loved me. Then she wrote that S's ghost had been visiting her more and more frequently, so it didn't end that night. It wasn't over yet. With all hope gone, I went up to the roof of her building and jumped off, killing myself. And the reason I'm wearing a suit is so that if I ever see M again someday, I can propose to her. The man spoke for quite some time, but it honestly felt like it was over in an instant. As I was distracted, the man in the suit stood up. "Well then, I'll see myself out," he said, and then left the store. Dazed, I felt kind of lightheaded until the meeting ended and I returned home. The next day, I noticed something strange as I left a comment to the group about the story of the man in the suit. A man in a suit? There was a man in a suit there. "You didn't answer me when I tried talking to you last night, so honestly, you frightened me. We were all careful around you because we thought you might be sick." Nobody else had heard the man's story. In fact, nobody else had even seen the man to begin with. People often say that scary stories attract spirits and, in this case, the man in the suit was perhaps drawn to us. K-san has been looking for M-san since he became a ghost, but the fact that he hasn't been able to see her might mean that she has already moved on to heaven. Or perhaps... I was shocked. I never once thought I'd hear such a story, let alone be a part of such a scary story myself. And so, I stopped going to such meetings. Guys, you should be careful of gatherings where you tell scary stories. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier member, Jojo. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Bunkai, Baffling Japanese Internet Mysteries Volume 2, available on Amazon right now, and our newly revamped merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for episode 100 of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.